There are so many hitters out there who absolutely love the high level pattern. However, sometimes they get stuck with some coaches who absolutely hate it and can't stand it. So in this video, I'm gonna show you how, as an athlete, you can deal with those coaches. So that way you can still focus on your development, yet not piss your coach off in the process. So first things first, we have to realize the difference between coaches who run teams and coaches who are in the private sector for development. Okay. Coaches who run teams, their main job is to write the lineup, all right? Their main job is to manage all of these athletes, sometimes 20, 30 at a time, all of these athletes, and manage the lineup and put the best players on the field. Like at the end of the day, that's their job. Their job is to not develop these athletes. That's why recruiting takes place, to get the best players to the organization, to recruit them for whatever position that you need filled, get the best ones that you possibly can, and then basically have them all try out against each other and pick the best to put in the lineup. Like that is what it is. That's their job. Literally, their job is not to develop you. Now, granted, they're supposed to host practices. They're supposed to give you some swings. They're supposed to give you some ground balls, give you some bullpen, stuff like that. But really managing that to an extremely high degree without all of these other back-end systems with strength conditioning coaches and, private hitting coaches and pitching coaches and stuff like that can manage program design at a high level and be able to put that whole infrastructure in to manage the entire team's program design. Like, it just doesn't really happen that well. And it also doesn't happen at Division I or professional sports that well either. Like it happens, but there's a reason why a lot of those D1 guys and almost all of those professional guys don't do the programs that they're given in the off season from the orgs. There's a reason for that, right? Like they like the private sector too because it's not as watered down in my opinion, okay? So knowing that that's their job and then knowing that the private sector, the coach, the real development's gonna happen over here, now it's a little bit easier for you to handle the situations that you're gonna run into when you run into it with your team coach, right? Because the private sector guy is going to be pretty open-minded to stuff that you bring to the table. If you come to the table and you're like, hey, I saw this, I kind of want to implement this. What do you think about this for my training? I'm having pain here right now. Do you think we should change it to this? Like that conversation is just a higher quality conversation, and the dialogue there can be a little bit different because at the end of the day, you're paying him for his service, or you're paying that company for their service, for their expertise, and they're going to walk you through that the fastest way possible. They just want you to get good results. Like most companies have really good ethics, in my opinion. I just choose to assume that people have good ethics and that they're there to actually help the athlete. And so people in the private sector generally don't have too much of a bias because they know that their job is heavily based around development. And if your job's heavily based around development, then you know that things change. Science changes over time. Over time, new things come to light. You have to apply the scientific theory and actually trial, test, and error. New methods, new philosophies, new ideas, new tools. And you have to trial and error them with a ton of athletes, different age groups, different skill levels to actually keep what works and weed out what doesn't and consistently improve your service and your product. Otherwise, you just get left behind. Like you end up not innovating as a company. And so most people in the development space, I think, try to do this. Granted, there's a lot of companies out there that have just created systems that they're just running, and then it's just a constant churn of athletes that don't stay there very long, yada, yada, yada. That's more like the business side of things where it's like better at certain things than development, but nonetheless, okay, generally development people, okay, are going to be a little bit more open dialogue and a little bit more open-minded to bringing different things to the table. People who run the team and write the lineup, not so much. Now, both coaches have ego. I'd be lying if I said that I didn't. I am not perfect. Sometimes people have brought stuff to my attention. I'm like, that's stupid. And then 6 months later, I'm like, it wasn't that stupid, right? So it's just part of the game, right? I think the longer that you coach, I've been in it for well over a decade now. I think I had my first lesson in like 2014 or 15. I have been doing it for long enough to know that not everything is concrete and sticks forever, but there has to be some leeway there for you to take on new things, new stuff that comes to light in order for you to improve your current service and innovate from within, right? So coaches, though, who are running the teams, they don't really have to think that way. They kind of just have one way of doing things. And if they've done it for a long period of time and the recruiters have recruited really good people to that organization, then it doesn't really matter. And they're like, well, I'm just going to do what I've always done. Like I'm secure in my job. I don't have a significant amount of pain to change any of this, right? And I'm good. Okay. But we have to realize that people make their decisions based off pain. So if for some reason this coach started to see that his athletes were leaving because he wasn't applying better methods, or there was a higher churn rate with clients after every team and things like that, like obviously there would be enough pain there financially where he'd be like, maybe I need to do something different, do something better, right? We all make decisions based off pain. People buy status, they buy cars they can't afford, they buy clothes they can't afford and stuff like that because they have this level of pain in their life where they're like, I want the status that's associated with that thing. So I'm going to buy that, right? People, there's a level of pain for why you ate this morning. You know, you were hungry. So you wanted to fill that level of pain. You wanted to fill that void and you put some food in your belly. It's just how people make decisions. So when you understand that, the psychology behind that, you're like, okay, so I understand now that this guy running this team, he probably doesn't have enough pain to ever just change his entire philosophy on hitting and his whole worldview on the swing. So there's really no point trying to convince him otherwise. Okay, parents, stop doing that. Athletes, don't hit his ego. This guy needs a lot of yes, sir, absolutely, sir. And you want him to associate nothing but positive attributes to you. You want it all to be based on your character, right? So that's going to be like hard worker, disciplined, shows up early, works his butt off, and just is a great teammate. Like you get those positive associations with you. When that coach starts to see you struggle or see you try to attempt or experiment with new stuff, you have more leeway there. Okay. There's more rope there for him to pull on. All right. The other guy who comes in there and he's like, I want to do things this way. This is what I think that we should do, even though it's completely different than what you teach. What do you think about this? Now there is an ego hit at that point. And when your ego gets hit as a coach, it's really hard to forgive. And it's really hard to come back and be like, you know what, you're right. It's just a hard thing for people to do, and we can't expect them to do it. Sometimes they never forgive. Sometimes they hold grudges for a long period of time. So there's really no point in telling him what you're doing or how you're doing it. The amount of volume that you're getting in practice is not going to really make or break you anyways. Doesn't matter if it's travel, club, college, high school, professional, like that volume there is not enough to actually move the needle. It's all the stuff that you're doing on the back end. It's all the extra swings you actually go to take in the cage, not the 25 that you get at practice. It's not the 50 ground balls you get at practice or the 20 pitch bullpen, right? It's the 200 ground balls you got in that one defensive session that you did. It's the 200 and 150 swings that you got in that one hitting session. It's the management of your frequency, volume, intensity from a thoroughly developed throwing program, and then throwing bullpens at prescribed intensities with a very specific stimulus to get a specific adaptation later on. And you do that for a long period of time. That is what moves the needle, not your 20 pitch bullpen with your coach who didn't really have a plan for frequency, volume, or intensity anyways. Right? So we know now development doesn't really happen on the team. Development happens on the back end. Okay. So when we have that perspective and we realize that anything that we say or do against this coach is just going to hurt us anyways, now you can be like, hey, I'm just not going to say anything. I'm just going to go bang. I want my results to be the make or break for me, not my opinions, not me hitting his ego, not all this other stuff. I don't need any of that. I don't need him to agree with what I'm doing. I just want him to associate good things with me. That puts you in a position to win. But let's say you're the person, the coach already knows what you want to do because maybe you've spoiled this relationship in the past, or he sees it and you're miserable because every time you check the lineup, you're hitting 9-hole because he hates how you hit, even though you're one of the best hitters on the team, let's say. I don't know. He can't stand what you're doing, so he's always harder on you at practice, and he tells your parents all the time that like, this is terrible. He shouldn't be doing the swing, stuff like that. If that's happening to you right now, just go in there, make a change, and be like, from now on, I'm going to be the yes, sir, absolutely, sir. I'm just going to do whatever you say. Let your pride take a hit for once. Let your ego take a hit. And instead, just boost his ego up, because we know that the needle will not be moved at practice that day. Okay? Those 25 swings, those little 3 drills he makes you do, and whatever else you can't stand, it doesn't matter. You're fine. What does matter is when you leave the field, what you do. All the extra work you put on the back end for your development, who you're investing in over here to run the ship, that's really what matters. So in my opinion, those are the tactics that I recommend to do. If you already burned the bridge, try to rebuild it. Try to rebuild it by getting all those positives associations with you and who you are as a person. So that way you have more leeway and you start to enjoy practice a little bit better. Okay, you know why this person isn't going to change, so just accept it and move on. And then from the developmental side, you never have to take this approach with that. If you ever feel like you have to take this approach with that guy in the developmental side, go hire somebody else, because you don't need that. Okay, go hire somebody who believes in the thing that you believe in, who wants to actually train you in that way, and go all in. Okay, hope this helps.